Hey guys, it's Mr. Walker here, and yes, I am still up here in the clouds at the top of this vine, and been up here for like a day now. You can see the beard's getting a little longer, the hair's all messed up. I had to use my shirt that I was wearing to make myself a tent to sleep in, and I'm getting a little nervous because I kind of lost my way. Luckily, there's a lot of golden goose eggs around here, so I've been making some omelets every morning for breakfast, so that's a good thing. But I'm trying to find my way back, and I'm trying to make some maps to try to retrace my steps and figure out where I am here. But I'm getting a little lost and a little confused. So hopefully, you guys can help me out. Maybe help me find my way out of here. But I'm gonna go ahead and lay down, take a little rest, and we'll put up some things. Maybe you guys, like I said, help me find my way back to my vine and get back down to the classroom here. So yeah, let me just go ahead and lay down here. Let's put up some work here, and you can help me out. Oh yeah, that's comfortable. That's nice. Oh, nice squishy clouds here. And a pillow. Okay, good. All right, so here's what we're looking at, guys. All right, guys. So when I got here, I started, I grabbed this piece of scrap paper out of my pocket here, and I started kind of mapping out where I was and where I was heading because I didn't want to get lost. I didn't bring any breadcrumbs or things like that, like Hansel and Gretel, but I figured, I could use my math skills to help me out here. So when I got here, I walked about 6 meters. Okay, so let me grab out a ruler here, and I know this isn't uh, necessarily in meters, but I think it'll suit our purpose for what I was trying to write out here. So I started by walking about 6 meters. So let me go ahead and draw a line here to represent that 6 meters. Okay, so just stretch this out to here, right? So we have 1 meter, 2 meters, 3 meters, 4 meters, 5 meters, 6 meters. So I walked about 6 meters, took a quick little snack break, had my centimeter of my Milky Way bar, and then I decided, what, let me walk a little bit more before it gets dark and I gotta make my tent for the night. So I walked another 8 tenths of a meter. So let me go ahead and draw in my 8 tenths here, and I'm gonna start here and go right about to this mark there. So all in all, I walked 6 and 8 tenths of a meter, right? So not terrible. I got pretty far before I had to stop for the night. But I don't know in which direction I walked that, so that's part of my problem here. But actually, this kind of leads us to our math goal for today, uh, which is to use metric measurements, a measurement like I have here, and some area models and different things to represent tenths as fractions greater than 1 and decimal numbers. So right now I have a fraction greater than 1, right? I have basically what we were calling a mixed number, right? I have a whole number and a fraction over here. So I want to be able to represent this as a decimal, so maybe I could start to chart my way back to my starting point here, and I could use decimals to express that. So we're going to go ahead and get started on that. So see if this helps me out a little bit. What I just want you guys to do first is make sure you have something to write on, something to write with, and if you have that one template that's available in the module, that might be a good idea to download that as well. It's probably going to help us out as we keep going through here. So make sure you have those things gathered up and you're ready to go, and then click continue, and we'll see what we can figure out here. Okay, well, as I said, here on my chart here, on my map that I was making, I started out by doing 6 meters. Okay, I walked 6 meters, so I have my 6 meters here, and then this piece here represented the other 8 tenths that I walked, okay? So essentially, we do 6 plus 8 tenths, and that's going to give us our 6 and 8 tenths. So that's easy enough to figure out there. But what about in decimal form, if I wanted to represent this in decimal form? Well, the same sort of thing. I would have 6, right? 6 whole, but my 8 tenths I could represent as 8 tenths, just like this. So now I would have 6 whole plus 8 tenths, which would equal 6 and 8 tenths. Okay, so I could represent the 6 and 8 tenths of a meter as 6 and 8 tenths in fractional form, or 6 and 8 tenths in decimal form. Okay, so either one of those would be correct as far as the distance that I walked. Okay. And basically, I just use this ruler down here to kind of help me sketch this out. Now, I looked at my 6 whole. Now, this is technically centimeters, but talking about scale here, I counted each one of these as a meter. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 whole, and then I counted up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and those are my 8/10ths of this meter because each one of these whole meters here is split into tenths. Okay, so hopefully you're with me on that so far. So that was yesterday. So when I got up this morning, I started walking some more, trying to find my way back. And let me see if I can map out how much I walked this time. So this morning I walked 3 meters. I'm going to mark that here. 1, 2, 3. All right, so 1, 2, 3, 3 meters. And then I was able to walk, well, actually, let me do this. Mark this here. 1, 3. So this was 3 meters, 3 whole. Right, and then I was able to walk another 5/10ths of a meter. So another 5/10ths would bring me right to there, okay? So this would be the second piece that I was able to walk, and I counted over 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 5/10ths, okay? And then I can represent that 5/10ths as either a fraction, 5/10ths, or as a decimal, 5/10ths, okay? So if I were to think about this in the two different forms, I would have my 3 meters plus my 5/10ths, and that would give me 3 and 5/10ths as a fraction, or if I did it decimal wise, my 5/10ths would look like this. My 5 is in the tenths place, so 3 whole plus 5/10ths would be 3 and 5/10ths, okay? So that's how far I was able to walk before breakfast this morning, is 3 and 5/10ths. Why don't you guys see if you can map out this last one for me? So I was able to walk after breakfast until I stopped to make this video. I was able to walk another 1 and 4/10ths. 1 and 4/10ths. How would that show up on the number line? How can we make a number line or use our ruler to represent 1 and 4/10ths? What would that look like? Awesome. And then what would that look like as both fractional and decimal representation? What would that look like? Perfect. So I could have 1 and 4/10ths, or as a decimal would be 1 and 4/10ths. And you might hear, or you might have heard as I was reading these, we say the word and a lot. Okay? And 4/10ths. That's the decimal. When you read a decimal point, you don't say 1.4. You say 1 and 4/10ths. That decimal kind of works as like an and, okay? It kind of tells us what we're dealing with here. So again, we'd read this as 1 and 4/10ths, or as we had previously, 3 and 5/10ths, or 6 and 8/10ths, okay? That decimal is going to be an and. And the same thing kind of like you've been doing with your fractions is what? 1 and 4/10ths, or 3 and 5/10ths, okay? So that decimal, or that break between our whole number and our fraction, or our whole number and our decimal, we're going to say that as and, okay? So hopefully that makes sense as far as how we kind of like read these numbers out loud. So let's expand upon this a little bit further, and I'm going to bring up this ruler a little bit, and if you guys have a ruler at home, you can play along with me here. Well, let's say that this ruler is showing centimeters now. I was using it as meters previously, but now we're going to say for what it really is, which is centimeters. I'm going to cover up a part of this ruler now. I'm going to zoom in just right here on this 1 centimeter right here. This 1 centimeter. How many tenths are there in 1 centimeter? How many tenths are there in 1 centimeter? Right, there are 10 tenths, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 10 tenths in 1 centimeter. All right, that's easy enough. What about 2 centimeters? How many tenths are there in 2 centimeters? 20, right? I would have 10 here, I would have 10 here, and those two together would be 20. So there would be 20 tenths in 2 centimeters, okay? So we're using kind of measurement here to frame this, but basically if I was looking at this without the measurement piece of it, if I had 1 whole, there would be 10 tenths in 1 whole. If I had 2 whole, there would be 20 tenths in 2 whole. Okay, so we're using measurement and using this ruler to kind of frame our thinking, but we're starting to make those connections now between wholes and decimals, especially tenths. That's what we're focusing on right now. So what about this? How many tenths would there be in 2.6 centimeters? If I had 2 and 6/10ths, how many total tenths would there be in this number? All right, well, I would have 10 here, 10 here, and I would have 6 here, so 10, 26. 26 tenths. So 2 and 6 tenths is the same as 26 tenths. Let's take this a little further by looking at another example. This is where your template available in the module is going to come in handy. All right, so taking a look at this example here, at this template, I have five squares, right? Five rectangles represented here, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Okay, so I have 5 here. So basically, I'm representing what number? What number am I representing? Yeah, 5 ones, right? 5 ones. So each one of these is worth 1. I'm representing it as 5 whole. Okay, so I have 5 here. But each rectangle, as you can see, has been split into equal parts. And if I were to count up those equal parts, I would have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So I'd have 10 in each whole, right? They're separated into tenths. So how many tenths would I have all together? And all 5 of these ones here, if I added up all of the tenths, how many tenths would I have all together? Exactly, I would have 50 tenths. Okay, because I would have 10, 20, 30, 40, 50. 50 tenths. So I have 5 ones, which is the same as 50 tenths. So let's look at a number example here. Let me get rid of this stuff real quick. What if I wanted to use this model now to represent the number 2 and 6 tenths? Okay, so let's say I walked another 2 and 6 tenths of a meter. How could I represent that on my model? Well, first off, let's look at our whole number. How many holes do we have? 2, right? I have 2. So let me go ahead and shade in 2 whole rectangles. Okay, so here's 1, and here's 2. So I have 2 whole. And then how many tenths do I have? 6 tenths, exactly. So I would do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6 tenths. So I am representing 2, and I'm representing 6 tenths, and I put them together, and I will get 2 and 6 tenths, which I could also rewrite as the decimal 2 and 6 tenths. How many more tenths would I need to get to the next whole number? How many more tenths would I need to get to the next whole number? I would need 4, right? 1, 2, 3, 4. So if I had another 4 tenths, then I would have 3 whole, right? It's just interesting to see that, to kind of relate that to where we're at in the number. Let's try another one. How about you guys try this one for me? What would, or how would you represent 3 and 2 tenths? 3 and 2 tenths as a fraction. How would you represent it first in the area model up here, and then how would you write that as a decimal? Okay, go ahead and try those two things, and then we're going to talk about it a little bit. All right, well, first I would start by coloring in 3 whole, right? 1, 2, 3, and then I would have 2 tenths. 1, 2, exactly, okay? So that's how I could represent it using the area model. And if I was going to write it as a decimal, well, I would have 3 whole and 2 tenths, 3 and 2 tenths. How many tenths are in this number altogether? How many tenths do I have altogether? Well, I would have 10 tenths here, I have 10 tenths here, 10 tenths here, and then 2 more tenths right here. So altogether I would have 10, 20, 30, 32 tenths. Now I can't write that as 32 tenths like that, because technically I'd be in the hundredths place, so this would be 32 hundredths, and we're going to look at that in an upcoming lesson. So that's not the way I would write it. If I wanted to write 32 tenths, technically I could write it as a fraction, 32 tenths, but then when we would switch this to a whole number, then it would be 3, because each one of those groups of 10, of those 32 tenths, each group of 10 makes 1 whole, and then I would have 2 tenths left over, which is what we're representing here. All right, guys. Well, maybe it's the altitude sickness getting to me a little bit here, but I'm feeling a little sluggish, a little tired. So I'm going to retrace my steps here. I'm going to go back those meters that I stepped forward here to see if I can't find my way back. Hopefully, I get an exit here pretty soon. I want you guys to practice with this a little bit more as far as the converting of tenths fraction-wise into decimals and kind of going back and forth and representing what that looks like on the area model. So we get a pretty good understanding of what's going on here. As always, if you guys have any questions, comments, or concerns, please reach out and let me know. Thanks for hanging with me in the clouds today. I appreciate that, and we'll talk to you guys soon. All right, thanks, guys.